Over the course of Ninjago's lifespan, there has been a lot of different artifacts, collectibles, whether they're weapons or whether they're not. There's been a lot of them throughout the time span, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. And now if I was to ask you which one was your favourite, what would you answer with? Would you say the golden weapons? Would you say the arrow blade? The scroll of forbidden spinjitzu? The dragon cores? There are so many different options for this, but the question is, which is the best overall? And that is a question I physically cannot answer because obviously it is completely down to personal opinion. But if you did ask me what one of my personal favourites were, I would probably say the Oni masks. And this for the most part is just because they're very unique weapons and they do a lot of interesting things, and they certainly do just stand out amongst the rest. So they have naturally become my favourites over time, but the problem with them is that they're extremely confusing to say the least. So I thought I would make a video covering it and giving a brief explanation on what they are and what actually makes them very confusing, because they are just weird weapons, they really are. So I just want to go through them with you and let me know what you think of the Oni masks before I explain what my reasoning and afterwards. But other than that, let me get into what the Oni masks themselves are. Now, the simplest way to explain the Oni masks is that they belong to 3 Oni warlords when they were fighting against the dragons, and these warlords had different ranges of power, but at some point in time, they became the masks. And the thing is, we actually have no explanation on how they became them. Well, no confirmed answer anyway. I'll give you the theorized answer in a bit. But the thing is that we have no idea when they went from pre and post mask. And we just don't know what they even looked like beforehand anyway. So it's a bit ambiguous to say the least. But yes, these masks are the essence of those previous Oni warlords, and each mask encompasses their own ability because of it. And those abilities are: the Mask of Vengeance is the one that turns them into a Master Swordsman, and also grants them the ability of 4 arms, and it is a very interesting ability, but it's nothing in comparison to the other ones, because then you have the Mask of Deception, which allows the user to control, move, and manipulate objects using telekinesis. But even then, that one doesn't even have a candle to the final one, which is the Mask of Hatred, which grants the user invulnerability with a magma stone armor. So each one has their own range of abilities, but this leads to the first weird inconsistency to me. That being that even though each of these Oni warlords had their own unique abilities, and you have to assume so, in my opinion, the masks have a very weird variation of power level, because one of them quite literally grants invulnerability, whereas the other one just gives someone 4 arms and makes them good with a sword. And well, that's just Garmadon. But speaking of Garmadon, he is linked to the final ability of all of these masks, which they all share in common, which is of course, once they are combined together at the Temple of Resurrection, they hold the ability to bring someone back from the departed realm. So each of them clearly has their own staple, and they are all connected in a lot of ways. But like I said, the first inconsistency to me is that the power level is very weird. And why do I think that they did this? Well, first off, they wanted each of the Oni masks to have their own unique abilities, because if all 3 of them were just the same thing, there's not really much of a relevance to them. But looking at it from a different perspective, I also think to an extent they wanted each of the masks to go up in power by how the ninja encountered them. Because if you notice, the ninja encountered the masks by variants of power. When they was first starting out, it was simply a mask that made them really good at fighting, but then they evolved to a more unique ability like telekinesis, and then finally, when they were firmly in the weeds of the season, they were given an invulnerability aspect to fight against. So I do think to an extent, you could look at it as they simply wanted the ninja's threat to progress as the season went along. But of course, that doesn't handle the in-universe perspective. So I do think the best idea to give is that these 3 Oni warlords were simply ones that rose the ranks by their own unique ability, and it does open the idea of what other Oni abilities are actually out there, because these are the only 3 that we see. But I would like to know if there were more out there. If so, what did they actually look like? But like I said, it is just very weird, because this does feel very inconsistent, because all 3 of these masks definitely have their own unique bit of power. But the thing is that two of them are now officially destroyed, being Deception and Hatred, and Vengeance is the only one left. And of course, to this day, we actually don't know where it is. And maybe it will come back in the future, but who knows, it's probably sat somewhere with the Time Twins. But that is my best explanation for why these masks were very different in terms of their power level, because like I said, that's the only two reasons I could relatively give, being either just unique abilities from the Oni army, or just they wanted the ninja to progress with their threat. But let me know what you do think of that. But let me get to the other problem I do have with these Oni masks. That of course being just the ambiguous nature in general of where they came from, because like I said, I did explain where the Oni masks came from and what we know about them, being the fact that they were Oni warlords. But the thing is, who were these warlords? I feel like we should have gotten more of an explanation on it. Or more specifically, how did those Oni warlords become the masks that we see in the show? Because how does an entire essence of someone be condensed down to a simple mask? Well, we do have a partial explanation for this, but it still doesn't satisfy me, because we don't know who any of the Oni warlords specifically were, but Tommy Andreasen has gone on note saying that there is one that he believes, or it was heavily implied, to be an Oni warlord, and that was actually Mistake. But which Oni warlord actually was she? Because we know nothing else outside of this fact. And also, it does just bring a whole new aspect into it, being how does an Oni warlord's powers get separated into a mask? And where are the other two Oni warlords? Well, for the most part, it does actually get somewhat explained by Tommy Andreasen, but it's not a full confirmed explanation, because simply put, he does imply that the two other Oni warlords were actually disposed of by Mistake herself. And how was she able to take on two of the other Oni warlords? And more specifically, which one actually was she? Well, I do have a running theory, so welcome to Ninjago Theories number 6, but the idea that I do vaguely have is that Mistake herself was the Oni mask of hatred, or more specifically, she was the Oni warlord that was invulnerable, and it's the only way it makes sense to me. Because if we do take a look at each of the masks and each of the abilities of the masks, I do think you could reasonably deduct which one she actually was. And I will go through it quickly. Now, in my opinion, the one she least likely could have been was the Mask of Vengeance, or more specifically, the Master Swordsman. Because in the scene where she reveals herself to Garmadon, she calls upon a staff, and not actually a sword. So why would a Master Swordsman, even without her abilities, go to a different weapon? I feel like she would have naturally have leaned towards the sword because that's what she knew. So I think that marks off Vengeance. And then this led me down to a rabbit hole where I tried to deduct whether it was Deception or Hatred. And I'm gonna be honest, Deception does have a very good argument to it because of the name itself. Obviously, she was deceptive in who she actually was. But I do think there is a small bit of evidence that suggests she was actually Hatred. And this actually comes from the fact that she was killed by Garmadon, because she clearly was not expecting to be killed in that moment, and she fought like someone who never had to worry about whether or not she was going to die. Because by all accounts, she never actually feared death, and she never even looked like she considered death. So I do think, to an extent, she was used to having an invulnerability factor to her, and that is why I do believe she is Hatred. And also, she screamed a lot when she was fighting Garmadon, so there's also a lot of hatred clearly there. But I do understand the argument for Deception, because she, by all accounts, was deceptive towards the ninja. But I do think, looking at the physical evidence in of itself, I do think she was Hatred. And it also then explains how she was able to take out the other Oni warlords. Because we don't actually know how the warlords became the masks, like we said. But does it make sense that Mistake, using the power of invulnerability, took out the other two Oni warlords? Because that's the only way, in my opinion, she would have been able to take out two of the other lords when she herself was one. And being invulnerable certainly does help. So did she use her ability of invulnerability to take out Deception and Vengeance? And then once her powers were contained to those masks, she also did it to herself. So that's, again, the best I could really say when it comes to it. But again, let me know what you think. But that is my other explanation to the other aspect of these Oni masks. And I'm gonna be honest, this makes it sound like I don't actually like them. But I'm gonna be honest, I love the Oni masks. I love everything about them. I own every single mold of the Oni mask that we have in minifigure form, it's just something I really enjoy. And it's just something that I think is a very interesting topic, because these legendary masks of the original beings of the realms of Ninjago, or the realms of the universe, we don't know a lot about them, and it does find it interesting to actually put an explanation to them and have them actually fully explained. But to be honest, I am hoping one day we get to learn more. But that about is it for the video, and it feels like I almost didn't have an answer for the question I'm setting out, but unfortunately, it's just a large theory, and that is something I enjoy explaining, and that's something I want to hear what you guys think. What do you guys think? Where did the Oni masks come from? How did the warlords become the masks? Did Mustake actually be an Oni warlord at one point in her life? If so, which one actually was she? These are all interesting questions, and it serves to explain Ninjago as a whole, and I do think it's an interesting topic. But like I said, let me know what you guys think, and thank you for watching, and thanks for listening to me ramble essentially, because this is a video I have had in my mind for a long time now. But like I said, let me know if you agree with my theory. But that's about it, guys. Thank you for watching, take care, okay,